this is organized is that we'll see that these ethics that we follow are really form the heart of what objectives we want to design. What are the objectives? What is the purpose of the system that we want to build? What are the objectives we want to code in the system? And then it gets affected by the user interface, like we saw, by data policies, the algorithms, the technology and the system design. Because as we'll see, whether a system should have a centralized design or should it have a decentralized design, right? All of these have wide implications in terms of who has the control to manage these systems. And that means that, so in a centralized system, you're really putting more power in the hands of the people who are controlling these systems. And what are the problems with that? So should the system from the beginning be set up in such a way that the centralization becomes difficult? And then once you do build these systems, right, you still need to manage them. So this is where we're talking about places where algorithms make mistakes, right? What sort of processes outside of technology have been set up so that these mistakes of technology can be addressed, right? Or we talked about affordances, right? Some things are easy to do, some things are hard to do. But if you see some misuse, then you would want to redesign, right? You would want to make some things which are harmful. You would want to make them harder to do. Build practices which can reduce the probability of occurrence of these events. Yeah. So that's what we call deployment management. In the course, we start with looking at theories of ethics. Then we'll see how these theories can be applied to thinking through the user interface, through the data and algorithms, the system design, and the deployment management. Then we'll get to wider issues that, okay, now that we know that all of these problems occur, but what kind of design methods are around, right, through which we can, in a consultative manner, in a participatory manner, we can design these systems so that more stakeholders have a say in what the system is meant to do, how should it be handled. So we look at design methods like participatory design, methods like value-sensitive design, which are really practices that exist in the discipline. It's just that they're not very actively used. So that also speaks about the organizational culture, which we'll look at in a little bit, that because a lot of these systems are built by people within companies, they're built by companies, right? So the organizational culture really drives. So these design methods are there, but are these design methods going to be used properly or not, right? So we look at the organizational culture, and then finally we look at the political economy, right? That who's benefiting ultimately, who are the winners, who are the losers in this whole system, which really influence, right? Because we know a lot, right? We know about how to design user interfaces so that they're good. There's so much research happening on AI, fairness in AI, on data privacy. There's a lot of thought on system design, deployment management, right? The right design methods, but is it used? Right? Are these incorporated in day-to-day practices? And if not, then why? Right? So that's what we look at when we start thinking through the political economy, and that's when we start questioning, right, the kind of systems, the kind of social systems that we live in, and what hampers some of this. In terms of what is social good, right, that we should be working towards. So I have actually also been trying to write a book, and we'll bring it up in due course in the course. But yeah, one of the points that I mentioned is that we need to distinguish between social good and what I call meta-social good, right? So meta-social good is about trying to fix the systems, trying to make sure that the systems that we have, the social systems, democracy, politics, right, those work in a better way. And those create a good environment so that social good itself can be defined, and that leads to more people working towards social good with the right ethical values, right? So ultimately all of these things are going to be important. So the course will hopefully give all of us a big picture of how these things come together really. So any questions at this point?
I have a question.
Yeah.
We have cited examples of Facebook and every other company.
Mm-hmm.
So if something is not in their objective, would it still be called unethical?
So I mean, if you look at it from this diagram, right, what one view to think about it is that ethics should inform your objectives as well. So the objectives themselves can be challenged, right? So irrespective of whether you design the user interface and so on, but if the objectives themselves are suspect, right? If the objectives themselves, right, by some ethical theories, right, these objectives themselves are nullified, then you can say that, well, it's unethical. Yeah. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so I was just thinking, like, if Facebook has an objective of money making, and they clearly say it, so would we still complain about their engagement and all these things? I mean, in one sense, it's good. Like they're helping people to not get themselves bored, or in terms of like this COVID situation, people can do something with the engagement. Otherwise, they will feel something like lonely, or may increase the suicides and all. But they are increasing the engagement, making people to stay happy and all. But on the other hand, people can think of like it's unethical.
Yeah, I think it's up for debate, right? What objective is better, right? So Facebook is, of course, I mean, it's hard to discuss about Facebook itself as a company because there are so many different aspects to it, right? So it's definitely very useful when it comes to learning about what's going in your social network. I gain a lot with news that people in my social circle that they share. So it's very useful in that sense. But again, things could be better. I think those algorithms which are generating the news. So, like one of the examples we discussed about news ranking, right? So, what's coded in those algorithms can impose, right? On the other hand, right, so it's also giving a medium for people to stay in touch with each other, and which I think, right, you're absolutely right in saying that it's really been helpful during the COVID situation and everything in general. Also, it's really made the world a smaller place in some sense. Yeah, but again, you can question some other counter effects. I mean, like some of the sociological effects that people have talked about, or psychological effects that, so we'll touch upon some of these, right? That the more you're exposed to news about your friends, sometimes it impacts you psychologically in terms of, right, maybe you're seeing that your friends are being very successful and you're not, and that sort of causes more distress. So now you can say that, well, that's not Facebook's responsibility, right? But on the other hand, if you look at it from ethical practices in other disciplines, you can counter that as well. So if you think about medical ethics, where you have to release a new medical device or a new drug, right, there are extensive procedures, there are extensive processes you need to go through. There are so many stages of trials and proving that your system is not going to harm anybody, that you need to go through. Now you can say that, well, why should computer science be different, right? If there are such severe psychological or sociological effects of these algorithms, of these systems, then, well, there should be a process so that just about nobody, right? It's not that anybody can come and set up these systems. Maybe there should be certain, like a review board, which should review what sort of things are released in the world. Now that can also be questioned, that it will impact innovation, which is one of the, which the market wants to accelerate. So ultimately the point is that these things are debatable, right? And that's really what we want to study. According to what principles should we discuss and debate, right? What objectives should be considered good or useful for society, which ones should not be, and what procedures should we then follow?